Hi, it's me again, Sue Stockdale, and welcome to the Sports 2000 podcast, the series that takes you behind the scenes of this British sports car prototype series that includes Duratecs and Pintos. The season is moving along apace, and in July I was at Donington for the fourth round of the Sports 2000 Championship. The weekend race meeting was mixed, and on the Sunday morning when I arrived, it looked like it was about to rain, and there was a power outage at the circuit. Well, on the upside, that gave me time to chat to Gary Gunn and Jonathan Loader, who make up Loaded Gun Racing. I began asking Gary about the Gunn cars that he has manufactured.
Yes, we've got a total of 7 cars actually that we've manufactured. That one is actually in a slightly different specification, but the other 6 are Sports 2000 spec Duratecs, but not all of them are actually out running. So we got 2 here today, and we got a third car, which is the sister car to this one, which is back in the workshop waiting for the driver to come and race it, really. And then the other cars are in people's garages not being raced or being sold, so we have no control over people racing our cars. But the cars that we've got here, we're trying to develop this car now into another MCR beater, as we have been in the past. They've been developing their car with huge amount of help from universities and ex-Formula 1 designers and things like that. That it's me taking that lot on, which is not the easiest thing, but that's what we're trying to do. We've had help from other people, but predominantly we're doing it on our own.
Well, it sounds like you're a man on a mission here, Gary. And as we're standing here in the paddock and we're at Donington today, I'm looking at a Gunn car and it's got Tom Stotton's name on it. We've interviewed Tom for the podcast before. Is this the championship winning car that Tom drove a couple of years ago when he won the championship?
It's parts. When Tom won the championship, it was a TS11. We've upgraded the car so much that what we basically did was we had a new chassis. So Tom's multiple championship winning chassis hung on the wall as a spare, and then we took the engine, gearbox, all the expensive bits off that championship winning car and put them onto this chassis, and then all the bodywork on this car is brand new for this year. So this is a new car, that's why it's a TS14, not an 11. Last year's car was a 12 because it was suspension orientated and had changed, but the bodywork was still of the original 11, and we skipped 13.
For obvious reasons. Unlucky for some, that number.
Yeah. So that's where we're at 14 at the minute, but it's time developing a car. As you look at all Formula 1 teams, they're in a similar boat to us. We just haven't got the time to test between. Tom's wife's just had a baby and there's limited time on things like that, so you can't develop a car without testing it. Simple as that. And we tested on Thursday and Friday, although Friday was a washout really. Thursday was good, it felt really good, but the weather conditions have changed. It's not as hot, the wind's picked up, so the car's changed its character. We're not switching the tyres on like we did on Thursday, so we just done some adjustments to that to try and help that in the race. We had a bad start yesterday, or Tom had a bad start, so where he should have been, he qualified 4th, should have been running, he should have had 3rd really, but was gapped, and by the time he got back to, you've suddenly got to find another second to catch a man past them, and that wasn't on the cards. So hopefully better start today. We've still got a bit to find to get past Mr. Gibbons and Josh, but we're heading in the right direction. Tom's now feels he's got a car that he can race, which is what we've been after really, and then we just keep developing it. The TS11 had come to a plateau, that was it. That's all that car could give us. I could find him a 10th, but when you come to a circuit, you need to find half a second. It's difficult. So this car's got a lot more potential. So we just got to unlock it. It's just no different to McLaren or Mercedes. It's there, switching the tyres on.
So Gary, tell me, what got you into motor racing in the first place? I know a number of guests we've interviewed already have talked about childhood, being at a racetrack and being inspired by watching racing. What was it like for you?
I was actually inspired racing and going and watch go-karting. There's a circuit near where we used to live called Hesham Head, which used to hold the World Short Circuit finals. And I used to cycle down there as a 12-year-old kid and watch go-karting. And I couldn't afford to do it myself, but I built my own car when I was 15. We were fortunate enough to live near the foreshore, just around the bay from Morecambe. So we had a playground, and I built this buggy when I was 15, taught myself to weld and build a car, and drove that. And then we came against the problem that what else could we do with it? And you couldn't race it. It wasn't built to any specifications. So there was a championship autograss racing. So I said to my dad, right, let's build an autograss car. So we built a Class 9 special. That car, I won 2 championships in it, came second 3 times, and then went circuit racing. So I raced for 4 years at Castle Combe in the GT Championship. And then we were running a Talbot Sunbeam. And then they allowed Sports 2000 into the championship. Oh, I suddenly went back about 7 places overnight. We just went backwards on the grid because they were the correct thing to have. So I thought, well, if I can't beat them, I'll join them. So I managed to find a crashed Sports 2000. I rebuilt that, made all the bits. I couldn't afford to buy new bits, so I made them. Managed to get a set of bodyworks all bashed and broken, repaired it all. Although it was heavy, got me on the grid. Ran that for 2-3 seasons. I was actually leading the champion. I lost the championship to Colin Fairbairn my second year by drop scores. Anyway, at that point, I'd given up racing because I was trying to build a Vauxhall Supersports, which was probably 2 steps up from Sports 2000. It was quite a professional championship. There's lots of manufacturers in that. And the only way to afford to build it was to sell the Sports 2000. And that was the pivotal point because I'd actually trained as a graphic designer and was working as a graphic designer to that point. But the guy that bought the car wanted me to run him. And at that point, then I started what was Gunn racing and then started running race cars at weekends, working for somebody during the week. Built the Vauxhall Supersports and then went racing with that. And we got it to the point where it was front 2 car. So that was very good. And then that championship sort of petered away. Became too expensive for its own good. And then the Sports 2000s came along, the Duratec Championship came. So right from the very start of Sports 2000, we actually modified the Vauxhall Supersports. Sort of degraded it, changed the tyres and changed the engine. That was on a Vauxhall, put the Duratec in. Even to the point where we actually helped develop the dry sump system for that engine with pace. So we were running that right from the word go. And even a lot of the Lolas, we actually upgraded the Lolas from a Pinto to a Duratec. So in the early days, we had like involvement in about 7 or 8 cars on the grid, but that was the only way to help Colin get it going. And then since then, we've just kept going, trying to make the car quicker, and it just takes time. You just got to keep plodding away, and bad weekend, you just go away, lick your wounds, come back fighting again.
And what gives you satisfaction, Gary, from all this? Because I get a sense of your practicalness in terms of building things from scratch, and I get a sense of your wanting to enhance and keep improving things. I suppose, how do you measure your own success?
Just by winning championships. We very much feel the underdog in a lot of cases. So there's certain circumstances that throughout that time where we felt done by the championship and other manufacturers, which just makes you stronger and come back harder.
And what circuits do you like to go to?
This is one of our favourite circuits. The fast, our cars, I wouldn't say they're good at places like Brands because we've won loads of races at Brands. We've won loads of races everywhere, but the car is a real fast circuit car. So here, Alton Park, Silverstone GP, Cadwell Park. These cars are too big for Cadwell Park. You get a lead off the start and that's it. Unless you make a mistake, you've got to win the race. So if you don't qualify particularly well, it's very difficult with loads of traffic when you're qualifying. And often we have been racing there with the Pintos. So that makes qualifying even worse because our speed round there compared to them is massive. So it's not our favourite. Brands Indy, it's a weird circuit to get a car to go well around Brands Indy. We have, but Brands GP, a few years ago, Tom and Michael were knocking the lap record by like half a second each session every time they went out. And so another fast circuit.
And will your car be heading to Europe this year? I think there's a race in Dijon later this season.
It all depends on the driver. If the driver wants to go, we'll take the car. I don't know. I haven't spoken to Tom about Dijon. Because we're not in the championship and it's a very expensive outing, it's a long way into France and you've all got this Canet situation and stuff like that. I think we'll probably not go and probably spend that money testing. This year we're not in the championship. Now we've got too many DFs. We haven't done a couple of rounds. So it's all about getting ready for next year. And I think the money's going to be far better spent. And tyre wear and engine wear and everything else. So we'll just probably do some more testing in this country and come out fighting next year, I think. It's the end. And
do you still drive yourself, Gary?
No, I realised when we started the Vauxhall Supersports, I used to race against Jonathan, actually, strangely enough, when I had my Lola, and that's how we got to know each other. But I had a guy who used to drive for me, a guy called Neil Burrows, who's a 250 British kart champion. And when he's driving the car, you just realise that I'm better at building them.
Finding your strength in a different place.
Yeah. So, and actually you get as much pleasure. The pressure's completely different type of pressure when you're driving a car. When you sat there on the grid, it's a different pressure to being on the pit wall
Well, this is probably a nice segue to introduce Jonathan Lutter to our conversation as well, as you mentioned there, Gary. Welcome, Jonathan.
Thank you.
Now tell me, what's your role in this team setup here?
Well, the way I generally describe it is that I think Gary's a genius. And if the definition of a genius is a human being that's stunningly brilliant at one thing and totally and utterly useless at everything else, he qualifies. So my job description is everything else.
I'm just hearing this.
I was a major customer of Loaded Gun as well as a partner in it because Gary ran me for many, many years very successfully. A wonderful time enjoying racing and being successful with Gary. But I do all the admin, all the money, all the books, the VAT return. I just generally, insurances, and I just organise everything to give him a clear run at doing what he's really good at. And it works. We've worked together now 21 years, actually. We've worked together, had Loaded Gun. I mean, being Loader and Gun works quite well with the name as well. And we've meshed together well because I'm utterly useless at all the things he's good at, and he's utterly useless at all the things I'm good at. So it's quite a good mesh.
It does sound like a really good team between the two of you, playing to your strengths, really.
We are playing to our strengths, and we've had so much fun doing it. That's the really good thing. The thing we massively share, is a competitive spirit. We both want to win. Winning 8 championships with the Gun in 12 years out of a cowshed.
That's a huge success.
Yeah, well, it's not bad, is it? And I've had my fair share of success, what other people have. Mike Genvy's got the other odd gun, which is a Sports 2000, and he's, Open Sports Car Championship. He's won, and so on. So if you set out in life to do a hobby for me, a job for him, if you wanted to be good at it, we haven't done too badly. Could have done better, but it could have been a hell of a lot worse.
Now, you mentioned that you've driven as well, Jonathan. Tell me about your startup and your interest in motorsport. We heard about Gary's watching the karting when he was a youngster. Where was the spark generated for your interest in motorsport when you were young?
None at all. I had no interest in it whatsoever. My father used to do all the publicity for a motorcycle club that did what was called scrambling then, motocross now. I became a trials rider. I was a trials rider for 15 years. I did a bit of scrambling. I did a couple of seasons of sidecar scrambling because a friend of mine was British champion in scrambling. And then I got married. I started a business. I packed up. And it started to hurt more. The older you get, the more it hurts when you fall off. So I packed it all up. And then, sadly, I got divorced. I bought a little bungalow in a cul-de-sac where I lived on my own. A guy at the end of the road, I was 41, the guy at the end of the road had a racing car. And he said to me one day, do you want to come to Goodwood and drive the car? So I did. And I raced every year for 25 years. And we went looking for cars to buy. And it just happened to be a Sports 2000 Tiger, which I bought. I did 7 races in his car first. And then I bought this Sports 2000, didn't really know anything about it. And then I actually met Gary to talk to for the first time behind the barriers at, is it Cascades at Alton Park? We'd both spun off on the same corner in the wet. So we had 20 minutes to have a natter while the rest of the race went on. And he wanted to develop the Vauxhall Supersports car into a Duratec car. And I had a successful business at the time, so I funded it. And then we were just sitting in my lounge one day and Loaded Gun happened, just evolved naturally, really, with my wife, Deborah. She's the D in Loaded Gun. And it's just gone from there. And he's prepared and run my car over the years. I mean, I think I've won every class. I haven't won the Pintos outright, but I've won A, B and C. Had a lot of fun and success. I also, when I sold my business, I bought a Chevron B19, 1971 Chevron, to do Allwell Supersports to start with and then Masters. We came second to a professional in the Allwell first year in the Chevron, running all over Europe. That was good fun, but eye-wateringly expensive in comparison with Sports 2000. And we've raced other things. I've got an MGB we've raced. I don't know what I've raced a Citroen 2CV as well. So we've just generally gone racing. But the Sports 2s are the key. He looks after Sports 2s for a lot of other people. A lot of people who run themselves will bring their cars to Gary for the complicated stuff or the winter rebuilds or that sort of thing. But his passion, of course, is the car called a Gun. And why wouldn't it be? And my version is they got bored with winning the championship, so they've radically changed the car. And it's a bit like Mercedes F1. It hasn't quite worked yet, but we're getting nearer. But that's the challenge, isn't it? I mean, we wish we got there sooner, but I can tell you we're going to get there.
Well, I love your confidence, Jonathan, in terms of what you're talking about here. Now, one of the things that you mentioned there that really stuck in my mind was sidecar. Yeah. Is that correct?
Yeah.
So just like on a road, there's 2 people, as a rider and somebody in the sidecar?
There's a rider and then there's an idiot in the sidecar.
Which one were you?
Well, guess.
The one in the sidecar.
Oh, yes.
Now, I've watched those races on the TT, for example, where they have the sidecar racing, and it requires an incredible amount of fitness and flexibility to be in the sidecar. Was that what you experienced?
I'll put it this way, I wasn't frightened when I got in a racing car. Yeah, I mean, motocross is up and down and bumpy and flying through the air and all that, so you have to be pretty fit. But you had to be fit to do trials anyway, and you had to be fit to do solo motocross. So I was fit in those days. I was very fit. I used to run cross countries for the county cross countries and all this sort of stuff. So I was a fit guy. The thing was that the British champion is the same age as me. He's 7 times British champion, twice runner-up in the world, was a friend, lived locally. It was just kind of a bit like Gary where he was. It was just a bit impossible if you're interested not to get involved. So I just naturally ended up in the sidecar, and not with Terry, but with another guy. But you do it. I mean, you don't really give it a second thought, do you? When you're young, there's an opportunity and you go and do it.
Did you ever have any scrapes or, accidents that were memorable?
Do you know what? I've never broken a bone. I've been quite severely bruised. So, yeah, of course, it's a very physical sport and you get bashed around. But again, you're young. One of the reasons I gave up bikes is it still hurt next Sunday from last Sunday. And when it takes 7 days plus to recover, then you start to think, is it worth it? But yeah, it's just a sport to go and enjoy.
And what is it that still keeps you motivated these days?
Well, I'm not racing anymore, just on 25 years. I was in the beginning of the SRCC. I mean, my membership number's number 5, was here at the beginning. Motivation, driving to win, obviously, to do as well as you possibly can, and have great races as well. That's also important. I mean, Andreas, who we run here, is a Viennese doctor, flies over and all the rest of it. Probably had the best race of his life yesterday. He normally gives me a wave when he comes down the pit lane at the end of a race. Yesterday, he came down and he's like that, a double thumbs up, but he came 6th, 7th. So a great race is important, a tussle, all that sort of thing. So that's the fun of it. What keeps me motivated? I'm not really. I'm running Andreas because Gary's busy doing this. I'm enjoying that. We sit out here and have a meal. That's lovely. I don't miss the driving. I've driven enough races that I'm happy not to be driving anymore. I'm doing other things. I've got a bit more money, got a bit more time. But coming here from time to time and still being involved and still doing stuff is very enjoyable. Seeing the people, because it's all about people, is very enjoyable. And also seeing him, well, it'd be nice to see him successful, but seeing him striving to regain his success is fun as well. So it's just what you do. It's part of life.
Wonderful. I hope you enjoyed hearing from Gary Gunn and Jonathan Loader about their Sports 2000 experiences and loaded gun racing. And if you enjoyed listening to this podcast, please spread the word by leaving us a review on Apple Podcasts. And remember to tell your friends about it too. You can connect with us at Sports 2000 on Facebook, Instagram or Twitter. Next time, I'll be talking to Keith Mizzen, who drives in the Duratec category and is also an avid sim racer. I hope you can join me then.